Hello, my name is Alexei Belov. I'm the project manager for the proposed 6112-631 project for two bridge replacements, which will be presented today. I work in the major project section of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's Highway Division, headquarters in Boston. During this presentation, we will explain the purpose of the public hearing, provide an overview of right-of-way procedures, and explain the bridge replacement designs. At the end of the presentation, there will be time for project-related questions, and we will explain how you can submit comments and questions about the project. This meeting is being recorded. I will now hand the floor to our MassDOT producers.
Thank you, Alexei. My name is Joseph Yu. I am one of the MassDOT producers this evening, providing tech support and facilitating questions. I am joined by my co-producer, Kayla Souza. So let's go over some basics. There are multiple languages in which you can review this presentation today. I'd like to introduce Michael Chan, the Khmer interpreter. Michael.
Hello, this is Michael Chan. I am the Cambodian interpreter. ជម្រាបសួរខ្ញុំឈ្មោះ Michael ហើយខ្ញុំគឺជាអ្នកបកប្រែភាសាខ្មែរបើមានត្រូវការសូមជួយមកភាសាខ្មែរអរគុណ
Interpreting for Portuguese, we have Rafa and Alyssa.
Esta reunião está disponível em português ao clicar no ícone do globo na parte inferior direita da sua tela. Obrigado.
And interpreting for Spanish, we have Susana.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Susana, la serviré de intérprete para español. Para acceder a ese canal, cuando vea el icono del globo para hacer en su pantalla, por favor selecciónelo y luego seleccione Spanish para el español. Gracias.
Thank you, everyone. I will start the interpretation channels now. You can access the multiple language interpretation services using the interpretation or the globe icon on the bottom of your screen. If you're having any technical difficulties with audio, you may want to call into the webinar at the number shown on the screen with the appropriate webinar ID. If you need general tech support, you can either call the Zoom tech support line, the 1888 number on the right side of your screen, or send questions to myself or Kayla using the Q&A box. If you'd like to toggle closed captionings, you can click this closed captioning CC button at the bottom of your screen. Please be advised that they are automatically generated, so they aren't always perfect. Finally, we'd like to know more about how many people are using our interpreting services tonight. We'd be launching a poll which asks what language you are currently listening in. Choice 1 is English, choice 2 is Spanish, choice 3 is Portuguese, and choice 4 is Khmer. We will not share the results of this poll with the audience, and the poll is completely anonymous. The poll is so that the project team can have a better understanding which audiences we are reaching, and we appreciate you taking the time to fill it out. Moving on, I'd like to let everyone know that this public hearing is being recorded. MassDOT may choose to retain and distribute the images, audio, and the Q&A transcript from this hearing. All parts of this hearing are considered a public record. If you're not comfortable with being part of an official record, please refrain from using the Q&A feature, or you may choose to excuse yourself from the hearing entirely. Information from this hearing will be posted on the mass.gov website. Your microphone and webcam are automatically disabled upon entering this hearing. This hearing will be open to questions and answers at the end of the presentation. Please take time to also respond to our survey at the end of the presentation. Your feedback is very important to us. The next slide here will show MassDOT policy on diversity and civil rights. All MassDOT activities, including public meetings and hearings, are free of discrimination. We welcome the diversity across our entire service area. And if you have any questions or concerns, please visit the mass.gov website shown on the screen to reach the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. Thank you for joining our meeting. We appreciate your participation. Back to you, Alexi.
Thank you, Joe. With us tonight, we have the following panel members. Brian Fallon represents District 4, and he is Project Development Engineer. Chris Casanello represents State Right-of-Way Bureau. Joe Yu is the producer. Kyla Souza is the producer. Town of Chelmsford represented by Christine Clancy, who is the DPW director. And we have design consultants with us tonight. Hardesty and Hanover represented by Ed Molnari, and Howard Stain Hudson represented by Bridget Myers. We also have a team of interpreters who were introduced earlier. A handout has been prepared and posted to the MassDOT website along with this meeting information. If you would like to retrieve that handout now, you will find information which may be useful to you in understanding the project and preparing formal comments in response to this presentation. The purpose of this public hearing is to provide an assured method by which the Commonwealth of Massachusetts can furnish to the public information concerning the state highway construction proposals, and to afford every interested resident of the area an opportunity to be heard on any proposed project. At the same time, the hearings afford the Commonwealth an additional opportunity to receive information from local sources, which would be of value to the state in making its final decisions and advancing the designs. Moving forward, you will see that the notice of meeting is included on page 2 of the handout. This notice appeared in Lowell Sun newspaper on May 31st, 2023 and June 7, 2023. The project we will be presenting today is MassDOT project number 612-631. This project will replace 2 bridges. One bridge carries Gorham Street over I-495, and the other carries Westford Street over I-495. We are currently in a 25% design stage, which means that some design details could possibly change moving forward. We estimate that the total of the project will cost $44 million for both bridges, which will come from federal aid funding, with the Federal Highway Administration funding 80% of the total construction cost. MassDOT will fund the remaining 20%. This project must be programmed in the statewide transportation improvement program in the appropriate federal fiscal year in order for MassDOT to choose a design-build team for eventual construction. The project will be delivered in design-build format. The total cost of the project does not include any right-of-way acquisition costs. The preliminary design is expected to be completed in the winter-spring of 2024, and final design and construction is expected to be completed within 36 months after that, assuming that the bridges will be constructed concurrently. As you may be aware, the reason for the project is the overall poor condition of the bridges, creating potential safety hazards. Rusted steel girders and deteriorated concrete and pavement are the most noticeable. We will present slides for each item listed on this agenda, starting with number 1, which is project need, and ending with a period of questions and hopefully answers. Project locations. The 2 bridges are located in Chelmsford, Westford Street over I-495, and to the north a few miles, Gorham Street over I-495, as shown on this map. As I indicated previously, these bridges will be replaced at the same time using the design-build method. Specifics about the design-build method will be provided later in the presentation. How did we get here? Back in October 2014, Hardesty and Hanover H&H, and Howard Stein Hudson, HSH, began the preliminary design of the Gorham Street Bridge over I-495. The Mass DOT preliminary design process investigated if the bridge was a candidate for rehabilitation. In August 2016, H&H completed the preliminary structure report, which recommended total bridge replacement. The project was then put on hold due to funding. In August 2020, the project was restarted and advanced to preliminary design. In February 2021, with the Gorham Street preliminary design completed, Mass DOT decided to add another structurally deficient bridge to the preliminary design package and create the Chelmsford design build package. Mass DOT is planning to issue a request for proposals from the pre-selected design build teams. Why was this project initiated? I will discuss the reason why this project was initiated over the next group of slides. You can clearly see the advanced deterioration of the steel beams and concrete bridge deck on this slide. The right picture shows emergency repairs recently completed by the Mass DOT District 4 Maintenance Group, who are tasked with keeping the old bridges in the district safe for the public. On the left is shown a typical pier on which there are 4 significant concrete spalls. Spalls are when pieces of concrete pop off due to freeze, thaw, moisture expansion, or expansion of corroding reinforcing steel, as shown on the right photo. As seen on the left, the sidewalk is in poor condition and is not ADA compliant due to the uneven pavement and step at the beginning of the bridge deck. The next photo shows past crash damage to the bridge rail and the emergency temporary repair by placing the guardrail in front of it. Just like the Gorham Street Bridge, the Westford Bridge steel beams are heavily corroded. On the left picture, the typical pier is shown, which has a pier cap deterioration and spalling on the pier columns. The structure is safe to be allowed to remain in service, but should be replaced. Gorham Street bicycles and pedestrians. Gorham Street lacks any bicycle accommodations. There is a wide pavement with wide lanes and shoulders, which lends itself to high vehicle speeds. The sidewalks leading to the bridge are in poor condition, with utility poles blocking the path in several locations. Westford Street has similar issues. There are no bicycle accommodations on the roadway. There is only one sidewalk over the bridge, and it ends on either side of the bridge without any accessible curb ramps. The other side of the bridge only has a safety curb, which is like a very narrow sidewalk that is not meant for pedestrian access. What do we want to accomplish? Project goals are the following: replace the structurally deficient bridges, provide new ADA compliant sidewalks along both sides of the roadways, add appropriate bicycle accommodations for each roadway, and maintain one direction of traffic along the bridges during construction. What alternatives were considered? The following alternatives were considered for both bridges: bridge deck replacement, superstructure replacement, and full bridge replacement. Full bridge replacement was the selected alternative. What is in the preferred alternative? This is the plan view of the proposed design for Gorham Street. And this is showing the southern project limits which extends just south of River Neck Road. With the wide pavement width that exists today, we were able to propose a design that includes narrower travel lanes, 11-foot wide, and add buffered bike lanes. These are 6-foot bike lanes with a 3-foot painted buffer. This will create a safer space for bicyclists traveling through the project limits. The sidewalks on both sides of the roadway will be reconstructed to new 6-foot sidewalks, and a new crosswalk is being proposed just south of River Neck Road. This crossing will have a rapid rectangular flashing beacon to improve the safety of the crosswalk. The reason crossing is being proposed here is because there is a bus stop in this location. This slide showing the rest of the project limits to the north. This shows the roadway over the bridge with the project extended to the Chelmsford lower line. The same cross-section is proposed to the entire project limits. This is a cross-section view of the proposed design for Gorham Street. You can see two 11-foot travel lanes, two 3-foot buffers, 6-foot bike lanes on each side, and 6-foot sidewalks on each side of the roadway. This is the plan view of the proposed design for Westford Street. The project limits for this bridge extend about 100 feet past the bridge on either end. The pavement width here is not quite as wide as Gorham Street, so the proposed design includes 11-foot travel lanes and 6-foot shoulders that can accommodate bicycles, essentially bike lanes without the biking markings. There will be 6-foot sidewalks on both sides of the bridge with ADA accessible curb ramps. Another reason there are no buffered bike lanes proposed on Westford Street is because the project limits are not in the area considered to have a high potential for everyday biking, as determined by Mass DOT 2019 statewide bike plan. This shows the proposed roadway cross-section for Westford Street. You can see two 11-foot travel lanes, two 6-foot shoulders, and two 6-foot sidewalks on either side of the roadway. Gorham Street Bridge will be a full bridge replacement with metallized steel beams used to prevent corrosion, high-performance reinforced concrete for the bridge deck, and sidewalks to increase durability. Safety parapet barriers with protective fencing will be constructed along each side of the bridge. The bridge section will match the approach roadway presented previously, with two 11-foot travel lanes, 6-foot bike lanes with 3-foot buffers, and two 6-foot sidewalks. Westford Street Bridge will also be a full bridge replacement with similar steel, concrete, and safety barrier features mentioned for the Gorham Street Bridge. The bridge section will also match the approach roadway with two 11-foot travel lanes, 6-foot shoulder/bike lanes, and two 6-foot sidewalks. How will bicyclists and pedestrians be impacted? During construction, bicyclists can continue to ride with vehicles on the roadway as they do today. So they will either remain on the bridge to follow the vehicle detour, depending on which direction they are traveling. We will go over the detour in more details shortly. Pedestrians will be provided with a sidewalk or protected path over both bridges at all times during construction. Following completion of constructions, pedestrians and bicycles will be accommodated on both bridges. What are the environmental, cultural, resource, and community impacts? There is no anticipated environmental impacts. We are not dealing with any wetlands areas within project limits, nor are we dealing with a bridge over water. Because the project is federally funded, we do need to follow the National Environmental Policy Act review, but we anticipate that all federal regulations will be cleared. Because this is a bridge replacement project and there are no wetlands or waterways within the project limits, we are exempt from Chapter 91 review, NEPA review, and the Wetland Protection Act review. What is the construction approach? With the conventional approach to procuring bridge and highway projects, MassDOT has relied on the design bid build method. In this case, the designer works with MassDOT to complete the final design bid documents and fully describe the details of the project. The design build method allows the contractor and designer to work together on all phases of the project to promote innovation, reduce project costs, and expedite project delivery. H&H and HSH will remain on the MassDOT review team throughout the final design and construction process. How will the road user be affected? This slide is showing the proposed one-way detour for Gorham Street. We did look at closing the whole bridge and detouring all traffic. However, because Gorham Street is frequently used by vehicles trying to bypass Route 3, there is a lot of traffic during peak hours, the morning and evening rush hours. A full detour would have caused significant traffic backups at the Carlisle/Boston Road intersection, even with a temporary signal. Therefore, we decided to maintain one direction of travel on the bridge. The southbound vehicles will remain on Gorham Street, and the northbound vehicles will detour up Carlisle Street. The detour is 1.1 mile long versus 1 mile long without a detour. And as mentioned previously, a pedestrian walkway will be maintained across the bridge during construction. Westford Street one-way detour. There are similar issues with Westford Street, given that the Chelmsford Center is not far from the project limits in the lower right corner of that map. Detouring all traffic would have caused more significant impacts to traffic. So Westford Street southbound traffic will remain on the bridge, and northbound traffic will be detoured up North Road to Dalton Road, where it will meet back with Westford Street. This detour is 1 mile long versus 0.7 miles distance without a detour. And again, a pedestrian walkway will be maintained across the bridge during construction. Our next steps. First step will be to finish preliminary design, and that is projected to be completed in the winter-spring 2024. Second step would be to procure design build team through selection process by MassDOT. That is planned to be completed in spring/summer of 2024. Next step will be to start the construction, and that is planned to start in the summer/fall of 2024. Next step, concurrently with ongoing construction, would be to develop and finish the final design. That is projected in the mid-2025. And then the final step is to complete the project in a safe and efficient manner. That is projected for the late 2026, maybe middle 2027. How will your property be impacted? Chris Casanella from the State Right-of-Way section will now explain the process.
Thank you, Alexi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Casanello, and I represent the Right-of-Way Bureau at the MassDOT. The Right-of-Way Bureau is responsible for acquiring all the necessary rights in private and public land for the design, construction, and implementation for this project. Affected property owners will be contacted by personnel from the Right-of-Way Bureau or consultants representing the Mass DOT. The procedures used must comply with state and federal regulations governing the acquisition process. The proposed design plan includes that right-of-way takings, including fee, permanent, and temporary easements, could be warranted if they are needed. Affected property owners' rights are protected under our Massachusetts general laws, primarily Chapter 79. If a project is receiving federal funds, the property owner's rights are further defined under Title III of the Real Property Acts of 1970 as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. How will we keep you informed? As stated previously, the purpose of this public hearing is to solicit your input regarding this project. As the final plans are not yet complete, we may not be able to answer all your questions or respond to all of your comments at this time. I would like to point out that the last 2 pages of the handout is a mailer. If you have any questions or comments which you would like to submit in writing, you may use that mailer to do that. You may mail it to the department within 10 business days of this date, and it will become part of the official record. You may also follow the links on your screen to send us your comments or questions. Please remember to identify yourself by name and affiliation, whether you are an abutter, local official, or concerned citizen. Finally, before we open the meeting to questions and discussion, it is a normal procedure to ask elected officials to offer their comments first. Are there any federal, state, or local officials who would like to speak at this time? Please use the raise hand feature. Okay, I will now turn it back to our Mass DOT producers to begin the questions and answer session.
Thank you, Alexei. So there are 2 main ways that you can ask questions or state your comments. First, you can raise your hand by clicking the raised hand icon to be unmuted for verbal questions. This is Alt Y on your keypad. You can also click on the Q&A icon to open up the Q&A box to type your questions and comments. When speaking, please state your name before your question or comment. And since we have a good amount of attendees, please try to share only 1 question or comment at a time, limited to 2 minutes to allow others to participate equitably. To ask a question by phone, dial *9 and the moderator will call out the last 4 digits of your phone number and unmute your audio when it's your turn. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a survey that pops up on your screen when you exit this hearing. Please take a couple minutes to complete this survey to let us know how your experience was with this virtual meeting. Since all questions and comments are subject to disclosure for public records, please use these functions for project-related businesses only and try to keep the conversation in a respectful manner. We have our first hand raised from Patricia. Patricia, I'm going to allow you to speak. So you can unmute yourself when ready.
All right. My name is Patricia Egan. I live on River Neck Road, and I'm glad to see that the bridge is being replaced. One of my concerns, as well as some of the other neighbors that were unable to attend tonight, is that the diverting of traffic down River Neck Road, we're asking that that you consider putting signs up with what the traffic speed should be, because right now we're experiencing people coming down the road and hitting the gas and being 50 miles an hour when they reach midpoint. And we really don't want to be backing out of our driveways or having children on bikes run over. So if we could have one at the beginning of River Neck by Gorham and at the beginning, at the end near Carlisle, that would be very, very helpful for us.
Thank you for the question, Patricia. We will definitely consider that. Standard signs for the construction zone also include the signs informing motorists about doubling the speed limit fines. So, and construction zone definitely not going to be welcoming any speeding. It's going to be a lot of orange signs, cones, barrels, drums, but we'll look into it.
And most of the traffic will be directed to detour before they, if they're coming north, they'll be directed to detour before they get up to River Neck. But traffic that needs to, reach River Neck or one of those other side streets will still be able to do so. But hopefully a majority of traffic will take that left onto Carlisle to head up that way. But definitely understand what you're saying.
All right, thank you both. At this point, we're going to switch to some of the written question and answers. So the first one is from Meg Marsh. Meg says, can you please elaborate on the anticipated traffic backups that would be caused from not keeping a lane open on Westford Street? It seems the project would be much more efficient if you closed both lanes to complete it.
So the issue is going to be at the intersection with North Road and Dalton Road. I'm not the specific traffic engineer. I know that that intersection was going to experience some significant delays to a point that, the level of service there would have been so bad that that's what the reason why we did not want to divert all traffic and we wanted to keep a lane open. So it was going to be that intersection that was going to have a lot of problems if we diverted all traffic.
Great, thank you. So I think in a similar vein, Gary Ryan asks, any thoughts of closing a bridge to speed up construction? We have done this on previous bridge projects in Chelmsford.
Yeah, it's similar issue with the intersections on the detour route, and it was mostly during peak hours. So we do have options. We do have detour plans created to allow for full closures if there are times where the contractor is able to do so, like during off-peak hours or weekends. So there is that potential that the contractor could decide to use that option during times when there's not peak traffic volumes, which could help speed things up.
Thank you, Bridget. We will consider this option. We will look into it.
All right, on to the next question from Michael Williams. Michael writes, are there any plans by the town to install speed tracking equipment or an increased police patrols to mitigate the impact to the streets that are being used for the detour route?
Hi, this is Christine Clancy, DPW Director. We will work with Mass DOT and the contractor to, if we have to, look at the detour routes. DPW would work with the police department, the local police department, to see if there's any speed control, any assessments that need to be done, and from there, any actions.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Next question is from Lauren Roberts. Lauren writes, can you please explain the typical schedule of this type of work for an individual bridge replacement project in terms of hours of construction during the week, construction overnight, duration of real noisy work, and how noise and vibration mitigations will be put in place for neighbors immediately adjacent to the bridge project who will be most impacted by the issue?
Thank you for the question. I think you'll see both. You'll see daytime work with, standard mass duty hours 7 to 3:30, and I think you'll see night shifts also for probably different operations. It's going to be one or the other, or maybe both at times. Mass duty contracts, I believe, have standard provisions for the noise and contractor being respectful to their abutters. Anybody wants to add to that?
Hi, Alexei. Yeah, that is correct. I know with design build contracts, there is a lot of emphasis put on noise and vibration mitigation. So the contractor is made well aware during their work procedures that they're going to have to work with the abutters and keep the noise and vibration to a minimum, especially with nighttime work. And that opens it up to different types of demolition that you can do instead of jackhammering decks. They saw cut decks and take them off piece by piece. So yeah, that is definitely part of the design build procurement contract, that noise and vibration is mitigated to the extent possible. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you, everyone. Next question from Gary Ryan. Gary asks, will both bridges be detoured over the 2-year construction span?
This is the plan. I think that's how we're currently planning on it.
All right, and then the 2 remaining questions are pretty similar. Will the majority of the work be performed during the day or at night?
Well, with the tour in place, I think traffic will be a consideration. So because traffic is consideration, I think it's going to be mostly night work. But as I said, probably going to be both at times. If anybody wants to add to that.
Yeah, Alexia, agreed. Especially again, as this is design build, the contractor and designer will be working together to get things done as quickly as possible. So they're going to use as much time as they can get to make sure, they get in and get out as soon as possible. That's the whole idea behind it, is to not have, a multi-year traffic setup and work on a bridge. So that's the general idea. So it's going to be based upon traffic numbers and, obviously disturbances to abutters and things like that will all be taken into account, but they will be looking to do work day and night on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
And then one last, I think, as a comment in the question and answer, Lauren Roberts writes, regarding the Westford Street Bridge and detour, I share my concern and comment about extending the duration of bridge construction activities over the course of 3 years by keeping one lane open. Cars going to the town center will be bottlenecked either way from Dalton or Westford Street and should be further evaluated and considered in an effort to minimize the duration of the impact. And then if someone wants to respond to that, that's fine, but I'm going to read the next comment also from Lauren. You noted that the Westford Street Bridge project has no anticipated easements. Where would equipment and work vehicles be staged?
I can answer the easement question. We didn't say there were going to be no easements, no anticipated easements. Since we're only at 25% design stage right now, we don't really know what design we're choosing, so we can't predict any impacts and any takings to this project yet. So we'll find out further down the road if there are going to be any takings and easements. But as far as where they're going to be storing their equipment and vehicles, that's kind of outside my purview.
Yeah, as far as equipment storage, it's the responsibility of the contractor to acquire his or her own work zone and equipment laydown areas. So if they're going to use something on state highway property, they have to get a permit from us, and we'll either grant it or not grant it, depending on, you know, the access to site and things like that. Or they're going to use their own, you know, available land that they have in the area. So again, as part of the design build process, that's incumbent upon the contractor to identify those areas of storage, and we don't know those yet. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Bruce Rosen writes, for the Chelmsford Bridge, I assume Dalton Road will be used for detour. The traffic light at Dalton and North Road is not timed very well for increased traffic. There is a no turn on red sign, and the light cycle is very long from that direction. Can the intersection be improved if there is increased traffic?
Yes, there's going to be signal timing changes made at that intersection to accommodate for the additional traffic from the detour.
Perfect, thank you. On to the next question. Lauren Roberts writes, will there be another meeting and when?
Usually we don't have another meeting after design public hearing, but again, because this is the design build, we might. Because if design build team will come up with something drastically different from what we're proposing, we might choose to have another public information meeting. Can't answer to the question when, but probably at the beginning of the construction, if I would have to guess. Hope I answered it.
Sure, thank you. So Rob Wilson also just wrote, not going to have a 75% meeting. So Lexi, I don't know if you want to just.
This is not normal procedure, no, usually we don't.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question, Meg Marsh wrote, how much faster would the Westford Street Bridge project be completed if both lanes of traffic are closed?
I can answer that. So right now we're proposing 2 stages of construction, which would typically take a year for each stage. Part of the design build process is the design builder may come back and say, we want to close the whole bridge and do it in a year. We will obviously entertain that. We're going to look at the pros and cons of that. You know, we'll have to see what the traffic impacts would be. And I think that might be a scenario that, like Alexi said, that if we see something that's a drastic change from what we're proposing here, that we might bring it back to the public.
Awesome, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Next question from Lauren Roberts. MassDOT owns land in the area of the Westford Street Bridge, and my concern from neighboring residents would be tree clearing. That would be very impactful, both visually and from a natural sound barrier, both during and after construction.
Yeah, we received this question, I think, after project information meeting that we had in August, about a year ago. We will take efforts, you know, to preserve as many trees and as many cover and barrier as possible, but some minor trimming, I think will be required, at least for the utility work.
Yeah, and Alexi, to add on to that, just so everybody's clear, the existing bridge isn't being widened. We're keeping just about the same width, and we're actually shortening it. The we're proposing to put the abutments in between the existing abutments and piers. So we're not making the bridge any longer. If anything, we're making it a little bit shorter. So hopefully it reduced those impacts and grading needs, and obviously the cutting of trees. We're trying to avoid that.
Yeah, and definitely no trees would be touched along I-495, which probably what you worry mostly about, right? That's your barrier, that's your cover. I'm talking about along the Route 3 and along the Westford Street, when I'm talking about minor trimming for the utility work.
Great, thank you both. Next question is from an anonymous attendee. The question is, how will emergency vehicles be accommodated during the construction process?
Well, I'm pretty sure when construction will be happening, it's going to be police detail on site at pretty much any time there is a construction crew there. So I'm sure some help will be provided by letting them through.
All right, thank you. A question came in from Jason Poor. Jason asks, was there any consideration to installing temporary signals for the Gorham Street Bridge rather than sending detour traffic through a 20-mile-an-hour school zone?
Assuming this means alternating traffic over the bridge with temporary signals. That was not typically a preferred solution. We did look at installing a temporary signal at Carlisle and Boston Road if we were going to be detouring all of the traffic. But even with that temporary signal, it was very poor operations at that intersection. But I think this also goes back to just making sure speeding is addressed on the detour route during construction.
Great, thank you, Bridget. Next question from Lauren Roberts. Lauren asks, on a 36-month construction period, is the anticipated 1 year per lane plus ramp up and ramp down for the third year?
Well, that's probably accurate, but yeah, I thought about that more like two-phase construction. So it's probably half the bridge in 18 months and then the other half of the bridge in another 18 months. Maybe a little bit shorter, and then completing all the approaches and the road work, leading to and departing from the bridge. Anybody wants to add?
Thank you, Alexi.
Sure.
The next question I'm seeing is from, I think, Katerina Kloki. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. Katerina writes, when Westford Street is completed, are there any plans for a sound barrier and sidewalks?
Not sure, not as part of this project anyway. So maybe there are plans. I would have to look, in some adjacent projects and maybe some programs that dealing with the sound barriers. Sidewalks is probably a more appropriate question for the town. I don't know, Christine.
Alexia, I can answer that. So we don't have any immediate plans for adding sidewalk on Westford Street, but in our sidewalk master plan, we do plan to put sidewalk on Westford Street. We haven't identified if it's both sides or one side, but that will be something we'll program in. We don't have a timeline though. I would say it's not the next few years, but beyond that, we should have more information.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Question from an anonymous attendee. Any consideration for adding temporary traffic lights with emergency opticom signals?
That, I think that would be only if we were looking to install more, I don't want to say permanent temporary, but a temporary signal that would be up in a location for, you know, an entire length of a construction timeline. But we don't have that. We don't have temporary signals going up for this project.
Thank you. And I think we just talked about sidewalks, but maybe a little bit more to say about the requirements here. So question from Meg Marsh. Since the Westford Street Bridge is more narrow and isn't being widened, is it necessary / required to do sidewalk on both sides?
It is required, yes. Yeah, it is Mass DOT policy. Mass DOT would like to promote pedestrian and bicycle travel everywhere. So we're trying to do bike accommodation and sidewalk on both sides of the roadways whenever it's possible. And looks like here it's definitely possible.
Thank you. Question from an anonymous attendee. How are questions typically asked and answered? Following the August 2022 meeting, I emailed the email address listed and did not get a response until 9 months later.
Apologies about you waiting that long, but you've done you followed all the correct steps. Yeah, just took a while for us to get to the answer. I'll try to be more expeditious. Yeah, we'll try to answer questions submitted sooner than that.
All right. Next question from Meg Marsh. It seems that many parts of this project are very much still up in the air and you don't have answers yet to questions. How will we be updated as progress is made and you have more information?
Well, as I mentioned before, there is all the contact information provided on the screen right now. You can email me asking about the project progress. And like I said, as part of the design build process, we might have additional project information meeting or maybe even meetings getting closer to the construction. So that's the way forward about informing the public.
Yeah, Lexi, if I could add to that too, usually during the design bid process, there's public outreach. That's part of the procurement contract with the contractor and designer to reach out to the public, whether that be a public meeting, whether it be, you know, radio, television, or newspapers, or flyers or whatever. So that is one of the requirements in the design build process, because things are still up in the air, because the design is at 25 and the design build contractor and designer, they have yet to move forward to a final design and have final plans. That's kind of the nature of this procurement process. So, you know, public outreach is definitely a part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Next question from Lauren Roberts. Can/would the project be expedited by splitting the project up and not trying to complete the two bridges simultaneously?
Good question. Thank you for the question, Lauren. It might, but we kind of followed the different path. You know, it was the opposite. Two bridges started out as the separate projects, and then were decided to bundle because of their, you know, proximity and the same town and the same type of the structures. So we're hoping we're making a better project by doing two at the same time.
Perfect, thank you. Next question from Gary Ryan. Will this presentation be made available?
Presentation is available right now, I think. I checked before the meeting. The PDF of the presentation that we showed you tonight is available right now on the same page that you were using to register for this meeting.
Thanks, Lexi. So Lauren Roberts writes, commenting that I appreciated signs being posted at homes and utility poles nearby to inform neighbors of the upcoming meeting versus just through newspaper or other avenues that may not be frequently viewed. That's great feedback. Thank you for that, Lauren.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not seeing any more questions in the queue or any raised hands. If we can just give it a few minutes. Reminder, you can type in a question or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. We can give you access to unmute.
Also, as a reminder, if you leave the meeting and you feel that you forgot to ask something, use that handout last 2 pages. Just write or type your question in there, mail it to MassDOT within 10 days. We will look at it even you mail it after 10 days. Just if you mail it within 10 days, it becomes the part of the record.
It's a great reminder. Thanks, Lexi. We do have a new hand raised. So Paul Cohen has raised their hand. So I've given you access to unmute your microphone. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, the question I have is I'm sort of confused as to why the detour route on Gorham Street has the northbound traffic detoured crossing over the southbound lane and then crossing back over the southbound lane when it's, when the detour is completed. I didn't understand why you wouldn't have just kept the northbound traffic on one side and the southbound traffic detoured coming the opposite direction on the other side. I'm just sort of puzzled as to that alternate detour route that sort of has you going across the other lane of traffic.
The reason the southbound traffic was kept on the bridge was because it had the heavier volumes during its peak hour, so that it was heavier. Southbound was heavier in the morning versus the northbound in the evening. But we do have detour plans drawn up for both directions. So there is the option for the contractor to switch it if needed.
Yeah, because then you wouldn't need the traffic detail officer, right? Because it seemed like you were looking at a traffic detail officer in the afternoons, and I just didn't understand why. It seemed like that could have been avoided if you would flip the plan the other direction.
I think we still needed them, but no, I definitely see what you're saying. But yeah, those we did, look at alternating detours as well, but didn't want to do too many, changes of the setup. But yeah, they do have that option to switch it if it needs to.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you both. So there's one more question now from Lauren Roberts. Can you confirm schedule again? It shows late 2026 to mid 2027 for, in quotes, complete project in safe and efficient manner. Is that period of time the estimated range for the start date, and construction would be completed approximately 36 months after that date?
Correct. Yes, I think I gave the range for the start, and this kind of creates the range for the end of the project also. We don't know for sure the duration. We projected it's going to be 36 months, but that's the best timeline we can provide now.
But the construction would start in 2024, correct?
Right, because the design build, that's what you're getting because it's a design build. You're getting construction starts sooner because we are not waiting for the final design to be fully developed. And that's another reason that we can't answer all the questions right now, because we don't have the final design. And even when construction starts, we will not have the final design yet. But that will hopefully get us to the finish line sooner too.
No open questions at the moment. We can hang on for a few minutes, see if any roll in.
Mhm, definitely can. Yep.
I see two questions that have come up. One is from Bruce Rosen asking what web link can be used to get update information after the meeting. So I think if someone from the project team could type back with the link to the project website, that would be helpful. And then the slide also has a QR code to get you to the design public hearing website. So two ways there. And then there's another question from an anonymous attendee. Are we able to view the traffic flow data?
I think that would be more of a ask that question, whether for what documents their traffic data is available.
Yeah, not sure. I would have to look into this. Do you mean the traffic flow over the bridges? Traffic flow affected by the detours, possibly?
Yeah, maybe we can give it a minute to see if that attendee wants to write up any clarification about, what traffic flow data they're talking about. But in the meantime, anonymous attendee also asks during construction if there are complaints, how should they be communicated?
During construction, it's going to be Mass DOT resident engineer on site. So that's probably going to be your best source of best point of communication. If not that, I think you can reach out to District 4, general email or general phone number. I'm sure they'll get you to the right person.
Yeah, Alexi, that is fine. And my hope is during the construction, the public outreach process is fully developed. So there will be, adequate avenues of contacting either the contractor, the district, or the designer to lodge any issues with us.
Yep.
Thank you. Good question.
Right. A question from Lauren just came in. Lauren asks, how long does demolition typically take if done on one side at a time? And is that the noisiest period of time during construction?
Alexi, you want me to take this one?
Yes, please, Paul.
All right, you got it. So demolition, they're gonna want to go quick. We're over 495. So they're gonna, shield it. They're gonna have to take lanes on 495 overnight. That would be part of removing the deck, and then also removal of the steel beams. They'll likely park a crane down on 495, take a lane, do that at night. That won't be the noisiest point. It would be removing of the concrete deck. Again, they're going to try to do it as quickly as possible. So, you're probably looking at like a week or two while that process is going on. Yeah, hope that answers the question.
So the clarification did come in on the traffic flow. So the comment reads, all of those options that you mentioned for the traffic flow, you mentioned data that is informing your decision. So I'm wondering if you have access to that.
Yeah, not sure. I would have to look into that. I don't think we usually share traffic data with the public, but if that's what is asked for, I'll look into that.
Right. Another question from Lauren Roberts. Lauren asks, what are typical night hours?
I think it varies. I don't think there are typical night hours, and certain provisions can be put in the contracts limiting contractor to certain windows. If I would have to guess, probably 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that, Alexi. And I think that some other things, I mean, the contractor doesn't want to work at night. Like they're going to come up with ways to expedite the demolition. There's options out there. They can cut the slab during the day and then pick the pieces up at night. There's different ways that they can handle it. Again, they don't want to be out there at 9 to 5. That's expensive for them. They need to have lighting towers and all sorts of safety measures in place to do that kind of work. So it's not something that they want to do. They want to be able to do it as quick and efficiently as possible.
Thank you, Paul. A question from an anonymous attendee. Do you notify residents in advance of when demo will be taking place so they can plan accordingly?
Yeah, I think you might see something. I think major operations might be advertised on the message boards or something like that. Maybe you'll get a note on the doorstep from the resident engineer or contractor.
Yeah, Alexi, and I think, going back to that public outreach again, I think that whatever methods that the contractor has developed to notify abutters, neighbors, town officials, and even Mass DOT of what type of work and when it's going to get done. That's the goal of the public outreach section of the design build contract, is to kind of have that, open discourse between, roadway users and abutters and the contractor. So that's the point of that provision of the contract, is to really keep the information flow going. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Brian. All right, I hope we answered all the questions. Thank you all for attending. We look forward to hear from all of you. Again, the reminder, if you forgot to ask something, use that last 2 pages of the handout to mail the question in or email. This public hearing is closed as of 7:11 p.m. Thank you all.